Hey, my good folks. Thank you for tuning in. My fascination for historic and abandoned buildings made me want to share this stop I made on a road trip to Kern County. Right, Chip Douglas? But don't let this beautiful background mislead you with the vineyards. This is actually what I was referring to. Check it out. I travel through this back road every so often, and I wanted to take this opportunity to share this video. I am not at all familiar with the history of this community, and the only information I found mention of this place once serving as a farm community. When I see abandoned places like these, I can't help to think about all the people that once resided here, and all the memories people may have of this community. I'm sure mothers, fathers, and children once occupied and played here, and now these dwellings are occupied by nature. This abandoned community is literally in the middle of nowhere. Located in Kern County, California, less than an hour northwest of Bakersfield, it is surrounded by vineyards, orchards, and occasional dairy farms along this country road. I admit, it is almost a bit eerie to see it in this condition. What also fascinates me about these buildings is how they withstand the test of time. I mean, look at the conditions that they are in. But what comes to mind when I see old dilapidated buildings standing strong takes me back when I was an apprentice carpenter, and the more experienced carpenters would often tell me they don't build them like they used to. Case in point, the lumber used to frame these buildings. During the era that these buildings were built, nominal lumber, meaning actual sizes, were used. So in other words, 2x4 lumber was actual 2 inches thick by 4 inches wide, versus modern lumber sizes which are not actual. Example, modern 2x4 lumber is actually 1.5 inches thick by 3.5 inches wide. Same with 2x6, 2x8, and so forth. I will admit that up until starting in this profession in 2002, I always thought that lumber was smaller than its actual size because of shrinkage. I was wrong. Apparently, between the late 1800s and the mid 1900s, lumber was made to order for carpenters, and lumber size tolerances varied, and because of that, shipping charges became costly, which then drove up the cost of lumber. Then in 1964, after lumber yards demanded lumber uniformity, the Lumber Congress and the industry agreed to lumber size standard. So to summarize, the evolution of 2x material resulted from economic compromise for the purpose of creating a nationwide standard for customers. Another two things I wanted to mention about old buildings are lead and asbestos. Both are very hazardous if inhaled, and there are regulations that require the proper abatement and handling of these materials during renovations to buildings. Lead was used in construction up until 1978 for construction materials such as roofs, electrical conduits, plumbing, and paints, to mention a few. Then in 1978, lead-based paints were banned. However, lead is still used in construction, primarily in bridges, railways, and other steel structures because lead-based paints inhibits rusting and corrosion of iron and steel. And asbestos, which can cause mesothelioma, is still used in some construction materials. Not common at all in residential construction. In fact, asbestos is heavily regulated. It is very rare to see it used in residential construction. Asbestos was commonly used in homes built before 1975, and the construction materials that asbestos was used on were insulation, glues on floor tiles, heating and ventilation ducts, linoleum, paints, and plaster, to mention a few. With all that said about lead and asbestos, and considering how toxic both are, you think people who vandalize these buildings, or any old building, would think twice about vandalizing buildings? I would hope so. I can almost guarantee people who vandalize buildings don't consider the harmful exposure they are getting themselves into. But also of importance, if you plan on renovating your home, and your home was built before 1980, be sure to have your home assessed for lead and/or asbestos before you conduct the work. Enjoy the sights and sounds of the remainder of the video. Take care and be awesome, everyone.